holds a special place in my heart because this is the location of the first pickup for our first date. Well, okay, it was a date to me. It was right here. Like literally right here. Whoa. I did it again. Okay, so here's what happened. After Joy and I exchanged emails back and forth for like every day for like a month, in November of that year, I was doing some stocking up for Christmas for my grocery store, and I needed to come to London to go to a wholesale place. And I had emailed Joy and told her I was coming into the city and maybe she wants to go with me. I was really just trying to impress her with my big wad of cash. I think I brought like $2,000 or $3,000 in cash. And I borrowed my dad's truck. I had been driving a Ford Ranger at the time, but my dad had an F-150 4x4. It was quite a bit larger. And I'm a bit challenged when it comes to the height situation. And I arranged to meet Joy like right here. So I came around that corner and pulled into this circle, and she was standing here with one of her good friends.
Standing like right there, came out those doors.
Yeah, and I pulled up and I could see them say, "Oh, there's Johnny." And then in my excitement, I misjudged the size of the pickup truck and I drove right up onto the curb, and they're standing there laughing at me. And in my mind, that was our first date. That was the first time we had really went out anywhere together. Joy does not see it as our first date. She was not dating me, but I was dating her. So after that, I picked Joy up in this spot for like probably 100 times over the next 3 years.
I had a lot of classes in this building.
Yeah. So there were a couple of checkpoints along the way where I started to notice things changing between Joy and I during our friendship phase. And this is one of them, right here in a Tim Hortons. So Joy was feeling a little bit emotional, and I was like that friend that she could talk to about this stuff. Sitting in this Tim Hortons, she made some type of a comment to the effect of, it's because I'm not pretty enough or something. And I told her that she was beautiful.
So I feel like maybe it was a changing point.
It was a changing point because I knew that our interactions changed. I notice things. That's my thing. I notice things, and I noticed our interactions they changed after that.
I don't like seeing the reflection in your glasses. And it's not that sunny. I don't know why you're wearing them.
My future's so bright, I gotta wear shades. So as I mentioned, there were a couple of checkpoints along the way where I noticed that our relationship went to another level. And this is the site of another one of those little other levels. Looks like an empty parking lot, but it's not. Well, it is right now. It is the site of the Western Fair. So in September, every year, there's a big fair here. Thousands of people. And Joy and I went to the fair together. And there was a point in which I had to stop and use the facilities. And there was a big row of porta potties. So I stopped to go to the bathroom. And I think at that point, Joy had noticed that I use the bathroom a fair bit. I like to keep a pretty good frequency of emptying my bladder due to, a few issues with a little thing called Spina Bifida. And when I came out of the bathroom, I sat down on the bench beside her. It's like she decided, we're good enough friends, let's talk about this thing.
We had never discussed your disability before. It had never come up.
Yeah.
It wasn't ever really a focus.
But I sat down, and then Joy kind of politely looked at me and said, "So, what's wrong with you?" But not in like it wasn't in an offensive way. Like, if we had just met, like, yesterday, and she asked me that, I would probably been a little bit more offended. But we were really good friends at that point, and it's a legitimate question.
Well, and I would probably, knowing what I know now, wouldn't phrase it that way.
Anyway, so we kind of had a little chat right there, and I explained about the whole Spina Bifida thing, and really it didn't go that deep. It was, here's the situation, and that was it. But it's interesting because right after that happened, I noticed a further development in the relationship. And it was right around this time that Joy started to sign her emails to me with love, L-U-V, love, Joy. I remember seeing the first one in my inbox, and I was like, this is good. I think I'm moving out of the friend zone.
I wasn't convinced. I was just...
It was happening, though. Like, she didn't even see it happening. I saw it happening. This girl is falling for me.
So, this is where I lived for 4 of my 5 years of university. I shared the apartment with a couple of girls, and we spent a lot of time here, and he'd pick me up lots as we were hanging out. We were still friends. Just friends. Until one fateful Sunday night. So,
one fateful Sunday night, I came down on Sunday afternoon to pick Joy up, and we used to attend church together at London Gospel Temple in the evenings on Sunday night. So I drove down. I got here maybe 4:30 in the afternoon, I'm thinking. A little bit too early to go to church, so I went upstairs to Joy's apartment, and we were just sitting at her dining room table chatting. And by this time, like a year or so had passed by between when we met, like, and started actually hanging out. And Joy was having an off day, and she started to, girl...
It was one of those...
feeling sorry for herself
yes.
kind of days. And she asked me a question, and she said, when we first met, what did you think of me?
I was thinking, did you think I was fat? Did you think I was ugly? Stupid things.
Yeah, and right away, I thought, well, here goes nothing. So I said, you don't really want to know. She said, no, I want to know. Did you think I was fat? No. What? Well, just tell me. I'm like, you really don't want to know. And so finally I said, well, the very first time that we met, I knew that you were the girl that I was going to marry.
And we had not ever talked like that. He was just my buddy. Things are different in his mind, but we were just friends.
I was dating her.
We were like best friends by this point. We talked almost every day, and I didn't know what to do with that information. I just put my head down on the table, and I just sat there in silence. It felt like for a really long time, and I don't really remember.
It wasn't a good sign. Like, when I saw her head kind of hit the table, and she kind of groaned, like, oh. I'm thinking, wow, this is not good. So I said to her, you know what, I'm just going to go.
It was really awkward then.
Yeah, like, I'm just going to head out. And she's like, no, it's fine. Well, let's go to church. So we drove over to church. It's, 15, 20-minute drive. Awkward drive. And I don't know if we even talked at all. And then, honestly, this is the weirdest night of my entire life. It is like the Twilight Zone. It was so weird. So we pull up to church. Things are weird. We walk in the door, and right away I see I have only ever dated 2 other girls ever.
And they didn't
live in the area. They lived back home where I was from, an hour away. I walk in the door, and I'm greeted by one of my ex-girlfriends. And Joy knew of her because I had told stories and stuff, and so I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going? And then I'm trying to explain, this is my friend Joy. Man, it was super awkward. So then we went in and we sat down in the pews, and I could hear my name. I could hear somebody saying Johnny, kind of like a bunch of people. Hey, Johnny. And I'm looking around, and up in the balcony, I see a whole bunch of people from my youth group from back home, and my other ex-girlfriend is in that group of people. And I'm thinking, this day could not get any weirder. Like, this is...
Oh, but it did.
This is weird.
So,
oh, man.
Then I feel bad because... So it's already really awkward. We haven't really spoken much to each other. And we're sitting down, and the church that we attended had this thing where, you know, during prayer time, you would stand up and you would hold hands with the person next to you. You know, it was like a prayer for families or something like that. And so I was being stupid, and I just said, you have to hold my hand.
Yeah, it was weird.
And it was really uncomfortable.
Yeah, really uncomfortable. So anyway, that night ended. I went home.
And we didn't talk for like 2 weeks after that.
Except that I showed up at an event at InterVarsity Christian Fellowship.
And I ignored you because I didn't know what to talk to you
So
about.
we kind of just let this go. Like, we just kind of emailed a little casually.
And meanwhile, I'm in turmoil because I know that however I respond, well, I didn't really like him like that. Like, he was my friend. But he was also, like, my best friend. And I knew that if I told him, like, I don't feel the same way, then I was going to lose that relationship. And so did a lot of praying over those 2 weeks.
And I didn't want to be stuck in the best friend zone. Like, this is not where I saw this going. Like, not that I didn't want to still be friends with her, but I didn't want to be like that friend who was in love with her attending her wedding at some point in time. That would be awful. So, anyway, fast forward like 2 weeks. 2 weeks, we decided, things had kind of died down. We didn't talk about it. We started kind of just talking like we normally had. And Joy said, why don't you come to church again tonight? I'm like, are you sure? Yeah, come. So we came, went to church, and it was a bit weird-ish. We went in, we sat down, we saw some friends, and then the service started, and we were singing. There was a point in the singing at church where, I don't know, I'll let Joy tell it in her own words, but she just knew, like, something changed in her mind, and she knew that her feelings had changed and that I was the guy that she was going to marry. The Lord did something, I would say, miraculous. And I always figured it would take a miracle to get me married, and it did, and it worked out. She ended up sitting down, so the pastor ends his prayer, the announcements are over, and he says, you may be seated. And then Joy sat down, like, super close beside me. Like, uncomfortable. Like, kind of that close where it's like you really know somebody.
Well,
Not
we
like...
did. We were friends.
So I'm looking down the aisle to see, well, maybe the aisle really filled up and we need to squeeze in. But there's nobody on the other side. And I'm thinking, why is she sitting so close to me? And then at another point, the service kind of had a little bit of a break.
And you shake hands, you greet people.
Yeah, you greet people or something. And her friend came up to her, and she was talk whispering. You know those people that say, hey, how are things going? And, like, they're yelling, but they're whisper yelling. There's no point to it. You might as well just
And you're
talk.
only like a foot and a half away.
And she asked, how are things with you and Johnny? And I overheard Joy say, things are good. He's the one. And I'm thinking, what the heck is she talking about? And then all of a sudden,
it sounds pretty crazy.
Yeah, it sounds crazy. But she knew.
It was like the switch flipped, and
then she had the hots for me.
Sounds gross. No, that wasn't it.
She had the hots for me.
So
I'm going with that. So at that point in time, I just remember, all of a sudden, like when something happens and you feel like a stabbing pain in your heart, and it's like something major has just happened. Well, I felt this stabbing pain in my heart, and all of a sudden I just turned to her and I said, I have to go to the bathroom. And I did have to go to the bathroom, I think. So I went to the bathroom, and I literally sat in a stall for like 10 minutes or more, because I wasn't sure if I should go back. And honestly, I had never thought that far. I had put so much effort into this chase that I never really thought through what happens if I actually do manage to reel her in. And so I was in like, I was happy, but I was also like, shoot, what do I do now? So anyway, after the service, Joy and I went to Krabby Joe's. It's a restaurant chain. And we talked, and it was weird because we were such good friends. We were best friends, and now we were more than friends. It was like,
No, we skipped kind of the dating part.
well, honestly, it was like, okay, well, I guess now we're probably going to get married. And it just felt fine.
Yeah.
For both of us. I think it freaked some people out, maybe. Her parents and maybe some of her friends too, and they just never said anything. My friends and my parents are probably cheering me on, thinking, how did he score that one? But anyway, it all worked out. And then came the engagement.